The day begins with an eerie silence, broken by the sudden fall of dead crows near Kishnoi River. An unsettling omen that sends a chill down the spine of Abhimanyu and Yug as they witness this unusual event. The quiet morning is now filled with a sense of foreboding. As the two friends stand there bewildered, Kachua, Abhimanyu's childhood friend, appears on the scene, his face etched with worry. Kachua shares the villagers' belief, a shiver in his voice. "It's a sign of Yakshini," he says, referring to a supernatural entity associated with death. The words hang heavy in the air, turning the morning even colder. Abhimanyu's mind races back to the previous night, to their action that now seems like a grave mistake. They had opened the door of the graveyard, a place rumored to be the second hideout of the dreaded Yakshini. As the reality of their action sinks in, Abhimanyu feels a knot in his stomach. He tries to dismiss the supernatural claims, attributing the sudden death of crows to the electromagnetic waves from his device. But deep down, he can't shake off the nagging feeling of unease. Is it possible that their reckless curiosity has disturbed something beyond their comprehension? The scene is grim, the tension palpable. Abhimanyu looks at Yug, his face mirroring his own fear and confusion. Kachua's words echo in their ears, a chilling reminder of the villagers' age-old beliefs. The silence is broken only by the soft thud of the dead crows hitting the ground, a grim soundtrack to their unfolding dread. As they stand there, amidst the unsettling scene, Abhimanyu can't help but wonder, could it be that we have invoked the wrath of Yakshini? The question hangs in the air, an ominous end to the morning that started like any other. But now everything has changed. As the first scene draws to a close, the narrative leaves us on the edge of our seats, eager yet apprehensive to discover what lies ahead in this supernatural saga. As they stand amidst the dead crows, Kachua reveals the graveyard's connection with Yakshini. Kachua's voice wavers, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on his words. "This graveyard," he says, "it's not just a resting place for the departed, it's also believed to be a second hideout for Yakshini." His eyes scan their surroundings, the eerie silence of the graveyard amplifying his fears. "Our ancestors sealed the graveyard door years ago to keep Yakshini confined. But you opened it," Kachua accuses, his gaze fixed on Abhimanyu and Yug, a mix of fear and disappointment in his eyes. Abhimanyu, however, remains unaffected by Kachua's words. His scientific mind refuses to succumb to the superstitions surrounding Yakshini. "Kachua," he begins, his voice steady and rational, "these crow deaths are not a supernatural phenomenon, they're a result of electromagnetic waves. My device," he lifts the small contraption in his hand, "it emits these waves. The crows must have been affected." But Kachua is not convinced. His grandmother's stories about Yakshini, the mystery and fear associated with her, are deeply ingrained in him. He's grown up with these tales, with the belief that Yakshini is real and her wrath is something to be feared. "Abhimanyu, you're dismissing our beliefs too easily," Kachua retorts, his voice filled with desperation. "These aren't just stories, they're a part of our culture, our heritage. Yakshini is real and we've possibly angered her." Abhimanyu and Yug exchange glances, their skepticism evident, but Kachua's conviction makes them pause. The tension is palpable as they contemplate the implications of their actions. As they stand in the graveyard, surrounded by the eerie silence and dead crows, the gravity of the situation begins to sink in. "You may not believe it, but my grandmother's stories about Yakshini are not mere tales," Kachua warns. His words hang in the air, a chilling reminder of the possible repercussions of their actions. The fear in his eyes, the seriousness of his tone, everything points towards an unsettling truth. They may have unwittingly unleashed something they can't control. Abhimanyu brings up the symbolic significance of crows in Hindu scriptures. He draws the attention of Yug and Kachua to the ancient texts that depict crows as the sacred messengers of the god of death, Yamraj. He goes on to explain that the crow, often seen as a harbinger of change, is deeply rooted in Hindu mythology. When a crow caws around a house, it's believed that Yamraj is sending a message, he states, his voice echoing in the silence that follows the mass death of crows. And when there's a sudden death of crows, it's said to be a sign of an impending doom. Kachua nods, adding depth to Abhimanyu's words. He shares the old traditions passed down from his grandmother. She used to say, "When the crows gather in large numbers, they're preparing to guide a soul to the afterlife," he recalls, his voice trembling with the weight of the memories. And she believed that the crows could foresee death and tried to warn us in advance. Abhimanyu nods, appreciating Kachua's insights. He adds, "It's not just about death and doom, though. Crows also symbolize transformation and life's cyclic nature. They remind us of the impermanence of life and the certainty of death." The silence that follows is deafening as the trio grapples with the gravity of their situation. The crows cawing, once a mere background noise, now feels eerily prophetic. "But who's to say these beliefs hold any truth?" Yug interrupts the silence, his skepticism clear. He raises an eyebrow at Abhimanyu and Kachua, challenging their beliefs and setting the stage for an intense discussion. The tension is palpable, the conversation veering towards an exploration of faith, superstitions, and the boundaries of human understanding. As the supernatural intertwines with reality, the trio finds themselves on the precipice of a mystery, teetering between skepticism and belief, science and the supernatural. The question looms large: are they reading too much into a natural event, or is this really a message from the other side? Opening. Yug challenges the superstitions and questions the credibility of these omens. As the debate heats up, Yug steadfastly stands his ground. His skepticism rings clear as he questions, "Are we really going to attribute the death of these crows to a supernatural entity?" His tone, laced with disbelief, echoes in the silence that follows. "Let's consider this," he continues. "Different religions, different cultures, they all have varied beliefs about crows. Some see them as harbingers of death, others as messengers of the divine. Who's to say which interpretation is correct?" His words hang in the air, a challenge to the superstitions held by his companions. He dismisses the tales of Yakshini, the supernatural entity associated with death, as mere folklore. These stories have been passed down through generations, but where's the factual basis? He asks, looking at Abhimanyu and Kachua expectantly. Caught off guard, Abhimanyu and Kachua are left silent, unable to provide a convincing response. Their beliefs, so deeply rooted in tradition and superstition, are suddenly thrown into question. It's a confrontation of their fears, their faith, and the reality they've known. Yug's skepticism isn't aimed at undermining their beliefs, rather, it serves as a call to examine the evidence, to question the accepted narratives, and to seek the truth beyond the tales. He argues, we can't live our lives bound by fear of the unknown. It's important to question, to seek answers, not just blindly accept what's been told. Isn't that the essence of progress? His words resonate, prompting Abhimanyu and Kachua to reconsider their stance. It's a moment of introspection, a moment of doubt, and a moment of truth. The tension is palpable, the silence deafening. Yug's challenge hangs in the balance, unanswered, leaving a trail of questions in its wake. It's a seed of doubt, planted firmly in the minds of Abhimanyu and Kachua. Closing, we can't just blindly accept these tales without any evidence, Yug concludes. Kachua expresses disappointment in Yug and Abhimanyu for opening the graveyard door. His voice carries a weight of centuries-old traditions and beliefs, a palpable fear that seems to hang in the air around them. He speaks of a time when the villagers themselves had sealed the graveyard, a sacrifice made to ensure peace. Our ancestors gave up a lot to close that door, Kachua says, his eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. There's an undercurrent of unease as he continues, his words painting a vivid picture of the past. They believed the graveyard was the second home of Yakshini. To disturb it was to invite her wrath, to disrupt the balance of life and death, he warns. His voice, usually full of life and laughter, is now solemn, almost a whisper, as if he's afraid of invoking the supernatural entity they've been discussing. But Yug, ever the skeptic, refuses to be swayed. His belief in science and logic remains unshaken, even in the face of these chilling tales. "We live in the 21st century, Kachua," he retorts, his tone firm. "We can't let fear of the unknown hold us hostage." His words hang in the air, a challenge to the age-old beliefs that have held sway in the village for generations. And so, the tension builds. It's a clash of the old and the new, of belief and skepticism, of fear and courage. As they grapple with the mysterious events and potential repercussions of their actions, the air grows thick with apprehension. It's as if they're standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss of uncertainty. Are we ready to face the consequences of our curiosity? Abhimanyu asks, his voice barely above a whisper. The question lingers, echoing in the silence that follows. It leaves us all wondering about the unfolding events and Yakshini's role in the villagers' lives. What will happen next? What does the future hold for our trio? The answers lie in the shadows, waiting to be revealed.